Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell is back in his home state of Kentucky tonight. This afternoon, I sat down with him in Owensboro for a one-on-one interview where we talked about several different issues. I started off asking the senator about the Republican National Convention and what message he thinks President Trump needs to convey this week to secure a second term in office.
I think there are two things that need to be conveyed. Number one, before the pandemic hit, we had comprehensive tax reform, which was hugely successful. We had the best economy in 50 years in February of this year. 2 Supreme Court justices, over 200 new federal court judges, strict constructionists who believe the job of a judge is to actually follow the law. Not only were taxes lowered, but regulations were lowered, and the economy was responding. I think that's what he needs to say. In addition, we need to point out what the other guys will do if they win. The Democratic Party today is not your mother's Democratic Party. All the moderates are gone. Joe Biden, I know him well, has signed up for the whole thing. He won the primary and then turned the policy over to Bernie Sanders. So what you can expect is District of Columbia statehood, giving 2 senators to a community full of lobbyists and influence peddlers. And that, of course, offsets the 2 senators from Kentucky. 2 senators with the new state of Puerto Rico, packing the Supreme Court by adding new justices and filling the vacancies, the circuit courts, the district courts as well, and putting judicial advocates in place. And then turning to the economy and do what Democrats always do, which is raise our taxes and over-regulate the economy. That's what you get if President Trump is defeated and if Chuck Schumer becomes the majority leader of the Senate, which brings me to my opponent. If she were to win this seat, the first vote she would cast would be to make Chuck Schumer the majority leader of the Senate, transferring that position from Kentucky to New York. But right now, of the 4 congressional leaders, I'm the only one of the 4 not from New York or California. A dramatic loss of influence for Kentucky.
Democrats last night immediately began countering the Republicans' message, saying that they are focusing on the president's failed response to COVID-19. We are in the middle of a pandemic. Many people are saying the government should be doing more. Should the government be doing more in coming up with a strategy to stop this pandemic?
Well, we do have a strategy. It's called the CARES Act. We spent $3 trillion to not only tackle the health care pandemic, but also to help float the economy during that period when we were literally shut down. We should be doing more. I've advocated another round of rescue for the country. The reason we're not is Pelosi and Schumer are demanding $3 trillion that includes such things as giving tax cuts to high-income people in New York and California, which has nothing whatsoever to do with the coronavirus. What I've recommended is a narrowly crafted coronavirus rescue package, liability protection so that we don't have an epidemic of lawsuits on the heels of the pandemic, kids in school, jobs, and health care. And we need another $1,200 check to low-income people who've been hit the hardest, those people who work largely in the hospitality industry, hotels, restaurants. And we need to prop up unemployment insurance because it's going to be unacceptably high until we get a vaccine. And that's the only way we get the coronavirus behind us. The coronavirus doesn't care about the election. The Democrats are trying to take advantage of it to beat the president, which I think is completely ridiculous and unsustainable, an argument that simply doesn't fly.
I want to ask you, too, about the post office. Are you concerned about mail-in voting, and do you think that the post office can handle it?
Post office is going to be fine. In the stalled negotiations we've had over getting another rescue package, the administration's offered $10 billion for the post office. That's plenty enough. The Postmaster General has said everybody's mail-in vote is going to be secure. I have total confidence that if our people choose to vote by mail, and during the pandemic, more people will be voting by mail for obvious reasons, their vote will be counted. The post office can handle it, and I think we ought to stop the argument over the post office. It's not going to be a problem.
Will the Senate vote on the package that the House voted on?
not post office only. I do think we ought to do more for the post office, but the post office by itself doesn't do anything to tackle the coronavirus. We need to do more than that. And so I would not pass a post office bill only. We need to do something for the post office, but we need to do all these other things, too, that help real people out there who are struggling.
A big issue this election, a lot of people are calling for defunding the police. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, it's an absurd argument. Most police officers all across the country are doing a very tough job, doing it well, to protect all of us. I mean, if you defund the police department, what do they expect people to do when they get in trouble? Call a social worker? That doesn't work. I think they're mixing up the demonstrations and not paying attention to the fact that there are two things going on in a typical demonstration. One is peaceful protesting, constitutionally protected activity, and the other, in many of these protests, looting and violence. Yes, I have no tolerance for looting and violence. The only people who can deal with looting and violence are our police officers, so they need to be supported. And I'm a proud supporter of the police. I think the defund the police argument is utterly nonsense and absurd. We ought to be grateful we have them and back them up.
Senator, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.